Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be joining us from. My name is Jean Wu. I'm an energy specialist with ESMAP at the World Bank, and I'm very delighted to welcome you to today's ESMAP webinar on developing a national clean cooking strategy and roadmap. So before we move into our program, I just wanted to share two very quick announcements to ensure everyone has the best experience possible. First one is a live French and English interpretation service is available, and you can select your preferred audio channel using the interpretation icon on your screen. And second, the session is being recorded, and after the event, we will share the recording, presentation slides, and the relevant session materials with all the registered participants, so you won't miss anything. With that, let's get started. So today's session marks the first webinar in our new ESMAP learning series on clean cooking, which will focus on practical country-driven approaches to designing, financing, and implementing national clean cooking strategies. So we're very fortunate to be joined by practitioners and government leaders who are working at the center of this agenda and who will be sharing real-life experiences, lessons, and approaches. So to formally open our session, it is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Fanny Misfell-Rangius, Practice Manager with ESMAP at the World Bank. Fanny, thank you very much for joining us today, and over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcoming you to today's webinar on developing a national clean cooking strategy and a roadmap. It's really a great pleasure to have you all here, and this is really a very important topic that's very close to my heart, and I feel that on clean cooking, when we're looking at the SDG commitments, SDG 7 commitments, this is really the part that's still lagging and where we need to make the most progress. Just to introduce what ESMAP is. ESMAP is the World Bank's a trust fund that helps low and middle income countries deploy sustainable energy solution to help boost economic growth and reduce poverty. And we've also played a key role in the Mission 300 initiative of the World Bank and African Development Bank to connect the 300 million people to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa by 2030. As part of these efforts, we are working with African governments to develop national energy compacts that set specific time-bound targets to scale up electricity access, increase the use of renewable energy, and attract additional private capital. Scaling up access to clean cooking lies at the very heart of these national energy compacts that countries are now implementing. Governments across regions are increasingly taking decisive steps to design and implement strategies and roadmaps that guide national policy priorities, attract investment, and accelerate progress towards achieving universal access to clean cooking. Building an effective national strategy means understanding the full clean cooking ecosystem, from market demand and affordability to supply chains for stoves and fuels, and the enabling policy and regulatory frameworks that support growth. And they can differ a lot across countries. For lasting change, clean cooking must become a political and policy priority. This means putting in place national policies and strategies that make clean cooking access a central element of national development and energy planning. This requires strong political leadership and engagement, building coalitions of domestic stakeholders across ministries, local governments, and civil society, embedding clean cooking goals within broader national goals such as 2030 agendas. Intersectoral and intergovernmental coordination is key. Clean cooking is not just about energy, it affects health, gender equity, economic opportunity, and climate resilience. And that's also precisely why the challenge of clean cooking has been so difficult to tackle. Today's session will explore what makes an effective national clean cooking strategy and implementation roadmap, one that aligns the efforts of governments, private sector, and development partners and catalyzes both public and private financing to deliver on the clean cooking commitment under the compacts. We are delighted to welcome representatives from the governments of Sierra Leone, Ghana, Malawi, and Tanzania who will share their experiences. We will also hear from private sector partners about what makes a strategy not just ambitious, but investable and actionable. This webinar is an opportunity for reflection on how countries can embark on this process and how ESMAP's Clean Cooking Fund can support them along the way. Through knowledge, partnership, and catalytic financing, we aim to help countries move from commitment to action and from action to lasting impact. Thank you again for joining us. I look forward to rich discussion and to learning from your experiences and insights.
Thank you very much, Fanny, for the opening remarks. We'll now begin our presentations. So our first presentation will be delivered by Ms. Aminata Wuri, head of the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit in Sierra Leone. So Aminata brings over 14 years of public sector reform, governance, and partnership building experience, and currently leads the efforts to accelerate clean cooking adoption nationwide through institutional coordination and targeted delivery mechanisms. So in her presentation, Aminata will share Sierra Leone's recently launched a national clean cooking strategy, the establishment and achievements of the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit, as well as what is required to operationalize and scale implementation moving forward. Aminata, we're very pleased to have you with us. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're joining from. My name is Aminata, as Jingie just told all of you. I am the head of the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit in Sierra Leone. And in my presentation, I will outline the current situation in Sierra Leone, our ambitious vision for the future, and the comprehensive strategy we will be implementing to ensure that every household in Sierra Leone has access to modern, clean, and efficient cooking solutions by 2035. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, the next slide. Sanam. Thank you so much. To understand the scale of the challenge, let's first look at the current reality on the ground. Currently, less than 1% of Sierra Leone's population has access to clean cooking. The vast majority, over 71% of households, still do rely on the traditional three-stone open fire, and that's what you see in the picture to your right. This figure consists of 93.8% of these households being from the rural areas, and around 52% are in the urban areas. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a crisis that impacts health, it drives deforestation, and burdens women and girls with fuel collection. However, within this challenge lies a significant opportunity with a potential market of over 1.7 million households. And based on the clean cooking strategy, it was reported that over 500,000 households are already willing to pay for improved cook stoves, and nearly 1 million middle-income households represent our primary serviceable market. This is not just a social imperative, it's a substantial economic and climate opportunity that is waiting to be unlocked. Next slide, please. Faced with this reality, we have developed, I think you skipped one slide. If you can just go back. Okay, next slide, sorry. Okay, great. Based on this, we have developed a very ambitious strategy. Our vision is very clear. We're working to achieve universal access to clean cooking solutions for all Sierra Leoneans by 2035. We have thoughtfully revised our original 2030 target to 2035. We had the 2030 targets that was aligned to the SDG 7, but looking at all of the dynamics on the ground, we have shifted that to 2035 to allow for a more realistic and phased implementation. Our goal is to transition the country towards a diverse, sustainable energy mix, and this includes promoting liquefied petroleum gas, known as LPG, ethanol, and electric cooking, and a range of improved cook stoves. By doing so, we will directly tackle deforestation, dramatically improve indoor air quality, and most importantly, enhance the health, the safety, and the economic livelihoods of women across the nation. Next slide. Our strategy is not just starting from scratch. It is firmly anchored in existing national policies, including our bioenergy policy, our nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement, and the Cleaner Cooking Energy Compact. Building on this foundation, the new Clean Cooking Strategy provides a unified and comprehensive roadmap for all stakeholders. We recognize that a key gap has been institutional coordination, and to address this head-on, the strategy calls for the empowerment of the existing Clean Cooking Delivery Unit, which I currently lead, which is housed within the Office of the President, and it oversees cross-sectoral coordination, ensures collaboration, which is the engine for driving the agenda forward. Next slide. Of course, the path forward is not without its obstacles. Our strategy is designed to directly address key barriers that have historically prevented the widespread adoption of clean cooking solutions. On the demand side, there's a lack of awareness on clean cooking benefits. Many communities in Sierra Leone have strong cultural preferences for the taste of food that is cooked over wood fire. There's also misinformation and misconception about clean technologies. For instance, there are fears that LPG is dangerous or that electric stoves cannot cook our traditional dishes properly. You also have low-risk perception, the health risk of smoke inhalation and chronic cumulative issues. They're not immediately dramatic as a sudden illness. This makes it very difficult to motivate change based on health warnings alone. Affordability and upfront cost is also a key barrier. This is often the most immediate and significant hurdle. For the majority of households in Sierra Leone, the initial investment required for a high-quality improved cook stove, an LPG cylinder, electric pressure cooker, for example, is simply too high. A lot of families in Sierra Leone live on daily or seasonal income, and they cannot afford the lump sum cost that is attributed to getting an LPG canister or e-cooking solutions, for example. On the supply side, there are weak distribution networks and inconsistent fuel supply. Even when people want to buy clean cooking products, they often cannot access them. In the rural areas, the distribution networks for products like LPG canisters or ethanol are weak, and in some areas, they're non-existent. So there is a lack of last-mile retailers and certified service centers. There's also inadequate enterprise financing and limited technical capacity of local producers. We also have technological barriers such as poor quality and non-standardized improved cook stoves with low efficiency and durability. There's also a lack of testing and certification centers to ensure compliance with ISO standards. The enabling environment is also a barrier. We have unclear institutional responsibilities and fragmented roles and responsibilities within ministries. Before the strategy, we had a lack of robust monitoring and evaluation framework to track progress. This has been addressed in the strategy, and going forward, we now have a proper M&E framework to track progress of all players involved. Next slide, please. Our strategic priorities are designed as a direct countermeasure to these challenges. To tackle affordability, we are prioritizing financial incentives, and this includes exploring subsidy schemes such as consumer financing, like pay-as-you-go systems, and leveraging carbon finance to reduce the upfront cost for the end user. To overcome awareness gaps, we will be supporting the government on awareness-raising campaigns and social marketing. What will be useful is to organize community demonstrations to teach communities how to use cleaner cooking solutions, for example, and also using trusted local leaders to educate the public on the real benefits, which is faster cooking, less smoke, save time and money, and most importantly, to dispel the myth surrounding clean cooking and clean cooking adoption. To solve the supply chain issues, we are focused on enterprise development and private sector financing mechanism. This means supporting local entrepreneurs to manufacture, distribute, and service clean cooking technologies, building out the retail infrastructure, and implementing robust standards for quality and safety. The strategy also calls for effective policy standards and regulatory frameworks, and this is geared towards LPG, bioethanol, and charcoal. And underpinning all of this is a cross-cutting priority of robust policy and institutional coordination. And this will be led by the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit, which I have the opportunity to lead. And this ensures that efforts are cohesive, they're sustained, and effective at a national scale. Next slide, please. I have been talking about the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit. I just want to just give you all a snippet of how it came about when it comes to its establishment. In 2021, the Clean Cooking Alliance developed and launched a clean cooking system strategy, which called for the establishment of clean cooking delivery units across Africa. Sierra Leone and Kenya were selected as the first two countries to kickstart this initiative. My role as the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit head is to lead the planning and the launch of the delivery units, which I've done. And this included engaging with key government officials across ministries and agencies, engaging our private sector players, supporting regulatory development, and aligning national priorities with Clean Cooking Alliance's global vision. Together with our partners, we aim to elevate clean cooking from a siloed energy issue to a cross-cutting national priority. Next slide, please. At the heart of the delivery units is the Clean Cooking Delivery Units. And just to give you all a brief background on the mandates, the unit is focused on building institutional capacity and fostering government-wide ownership of clean cooking initiatives. A key priority is mobilizing finance through both development partners and emerging mechanisms such as carbon markets to support the scale-up of clean cooking solutions. The unit is also working to mainstream clean cooking into national programs and recognizing its cross-cutting impact. We're looking at scaling it up to school feeding, programs regarding to health, gender equality, and climate action. We'll also be working with key stakeholders such as the World Bank to facilitate data and evidence generation for investment planning. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So far, we're already making significant progress and we're able to report on key achievements. We have established a national clean cooking accelerator platform, which convenes an array of stakeholders from the government, the private sector, financiers, NGOs, and we meet every 2 weeks to share knowledge and to also ensure that all of what we're doing is aligned to the clean cooking strategy. In May of this year, we conducted a clean cooking carbon market training for policymakers. And this was very important because training government officials on how carbon finance works is critical because it's going to equip us to unlock new streams of results-based funding where emissions reductions from clean cooking can be verified and sold on the global market. The Clean Cooking Unit also led in the development of the National Clean Cooking Strategy that has been launched. And also, we have engaged national stakeholders. We have engaged regional stakeholders such as the ESMAP. And we've also engaged
Javier, could you mute, please?
Sure. My bad.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, so we have also launched a clean cooking strategy in October of this year, which was absolutely monumental. because we now have a clear roadmap, we have something that is a concrete solution that we can all work towards. The Clean Cooking Unit is also leading on project and investment facilitation. We are already moving from talk to action. We have begun facilitating investments in the carbon market space and spearheading the granting of duty waivers for businesses in the clean cooking industry. Next slide, please. With the strategy now launched, we can now shift to execution of clean cooking initiatives. When it comes to policy implementation, the delivery units will spearhead and drive the implementation of the clean cooking strategy. We will also support the implementation of the Mission 300, focusing on the clean cooking components that's captured in the compact with a targeted investment of $100 million. When it comes to sector coordination and collaboration, we will continue to strengthen the Clean Cooking Accelerator platform to convene key players across clean cooking ecosystem. We're also going to establish and operationalize the Interministerial Committee on Clean Cooking that will be comprised of ministers and deputy ministers from key implementing ministries, and this body will be the decision-making body for the clean cooking strategy. We're also working with the private sector through the Clean Cooking Association, and we'll continue to work with this body as a primary private sector coordination body to lead on all clean cooking programs relating to the private sector. When it comes to our intervention areas, we'll be working with key stakeholders such as ESMAP and the World Bank to develop a clean cooking carbon investment framework and build on the earlier training to create a formal national framework. And this means establishing the rules, the systems, and the processes to consistently measure, report, and verify emissions reduction from clean cooking projects. We're also going to be developing and finalizing the institutional cooking transition strategy. And this is a targeted priority, which will focus on transitioning public institutions like schools, prisons, hospitals, from using traditional fuels to cleaner options like LPG and electric cooking. We're also going to be working with the government and the private sector to develop a pipeline of bankable projects. And the Clean Cooking Unit will act as a matchmaker and a project incubator, which will proactively work with developers and prepare and package promising clean cooking business proposals and hopefully attract more investment into the sector. Next slide. To bring my discussion to a close, I just want to summarize some key takeaways as we look back. The strategy's success hinges on strategic partnership, financing, and strong institutional capacity. The Clean Cooking Strategy provides a unified and national roadmap for universal access, which is a clear plan now exists. We are no longer just describing a problem. Today, we're presenting a concrete solution. Thirdly, the Clean Cooking Delivery Unit is central in driving coordination and accountability. We want to drive delivery across ministries, and we cannot succeed with a fragmented approach. We have to also keep this in mind. Less than 1% of households in Sierra Leone currently use clean cooking solution, highlighting a major opportunity for transformation. Clean cooking is a major cross-cutting opportunity, it's no longer an energy issue. So therefore, looking at elements relating to public health, women's empowerment, and climate action will be a priority and a significant economic opportunity all at once. Addressing it creates a powerful positive ripple effect across the entire society. So what next? Next slide, please. We want to work with partners such as the World Bank and ESMAP to kickstart and finalize the carbon framework. We have a lot of investors interested in the carbon market in Sierra Leone, but it's not structured. Having a carbon framework will help the government to structure the carbon market space just to ensure that the government also benefits from carbon projects. We want to launch and institutionalize capacity building programs across key MDAs to ensure that government is in a position to promote clean cooking adoption. We also want to implement institutional cooking transition from improved cook stoves that we currently have in public institutions to using LPG and e-cooking. We also want to develop and pass the Clean Cooking Act over time to institutionalize coordination and regulation. We're also going to be working with all of the development partners, our government stakeholders, our NGOs, the private sector, to mobilize multi-donor financing and align support through the Clean Cooking Delivery Units platform. With this said, I want to thank you for your attention. I was trying to go fast to keep within the 10 minutes mark that you have given us. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aminata. That was a very rich and inspiring overview, and it is very exciting to hear about the level of structure, momentum, and institutional leadership even from Sierra Leone. So we will now move to our second presentation, which provides a complementary perspective on how governments can standardize their planning processes to ensure that national strategies are comprehensive, evidence-based, and practical for long-term implementation. So our second speaker is Mr. Marufu Barasa, Executive Chair and Founding Partner of ED Advisory, a Fellow at the Energy for Growth Hub and Chair of the Kenya Renewable Energy Association, with over 20 years of experience in energy policy, climate planning, and clean cooking strategy support across multiple African countries. So Marufu will introduce a structured, standardized planning framework that is critical for national clean cooking planning. So Marufu, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jinyi and the World Bank team for convening this very important conversation. I think for the longest time, as we all acknowledge, a lot of effort towards universal access to modern energy has focused on electrification. But as we've all noticed, there's now more concerted effort towards addressing the question of access to clean cooking. So thank you very much again for inviting us to share our experiences. And in just a few minutes, because I have just 10 minutes, I want to share just 5 key lessons that we have picked up as we've been working and collaborating with different actors in the clean cooking space in Africa. So my presentation will cover just an introduction of EED, these 5 core components, and yes, and then I'll stop there. Okay, so we are a Pan-African consulting company. We are based in Nairobi, but we also have offices in Dakar, in Senegal, and in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have implemented several projects across multiple countries, and we work with development agencies, with philanthropies, with universities, private sector, etc. We have had the privilege of working in very many countries on this specific topic, and 5 lessons, if you like, that I'll be sharing will be based on this experience. So we were the lead consultant in drafting the Kenya National Cooking Transition Strategy. We have supported the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund to design a clean cooking market activation program in Tanzania. At the moment, we are working with the African Development Bank to develop a clean cooking strategy in Malawi. We're doing some work in Mozambique to develop an LPG master plan. Of course, this doesn't cover the entire cooking sector, but it's a core component of the cooking sector. We have also had the privilege of working with Aminata in Sierra Leone to develop the strategy that she just presented. We are also working with Liberia to develop our clean cooking action plan. And there are several other countries. I'm not going to go through all of them in the interest of time. And I would also add that this work has benefited greatly from the World Bank multi-tier energy access surveys, because those have contributed critically to designing most, if not all, of these strategies. So let me go right into the components. So the first one, and the first lesson really that I'd like to share, is the need to localize the definition of clean cooking. So we have different frameworks of categorizing what clean cooking is. You have traditional, you have improved, you have clean and cleaner, you have modern, and a lot of effort has gone to creating clear frameworks of distinguishing these types of applications. But even with that, we still find that many of these definitions are fluid. They're also hard to apply because sometimes they focus on the fuel, and sometimes they focus on the technology, sometimes they focus on both. And then also, as you hear people defining these cooking solutions, you'll hear someone say, we are just focusing on tier 4. But tier 4 in itself is not a definition, because, you know, the ISO Iowa framework has these 6-tier classification matrix, which is quite complicated when you're trying to apply it on the ground. So in our experience, while working very closely with different governments and different actors, we have tried to localize the definition of clean cooking. So what does clean cooking mean in the context of Malawi? What does clean cooking mean in the context of Kenya and in Tanzania? Of course, anchored and guided by these very, very useful frameworks. But the first lesson is there's a need, and it's very important to localize the definition. The next is characterizing the market segments. So you'll also hear a discussion along the lines that if there are 1 million households that lack access to clean cooking, sometimes the assumption is that those 1 million households are actually a viable market. But what we find is if the markets can be broadly, and this is really, really broadly, these are really broad brushes of characterizing the markets. You find that the markets can be classified into these 4 types, these 4 quadrants. So if you look at the x-axis, which represents affordability, this is the ability and willingness to pay. And if you look at the y-axis, this is the level of development of the last mile. So can people buy or purchase or access the technology and the fuel? So of course, in quadrant 2, which is a commercial market, a functional market, you have customers who are willing and able to pay, and they have access. So if you think about a middle class urban households, right? So they can just walk outside their house and they can access an LPG and they can afford it. So this is a functional market. And then you have those markets that have access. So if you think about low income urban areas, so, you know, they, while walking to work, they pass shops that are selling LPG canisters or tanks, if you like, but they cannot afford. And then quadrant 4 are households or customers that are able and willing to pay, but don't have access. So think about middle-class households in rural areas. And then quadrant 3 is sort of the worst of both worlds. So the customers are not able to pay or willing to pay, and they don't have access. And in quadrant 3, what we find is that these are typically non-commercial markets. It's very, very hard to commercialize this segment. So you find that it could be a rural household that is using firewood. The firewood is collected, so there's no financial cost to it. And maybe they're using the 3-stone open fire. Again, there's no cost to it. So it becomes very difficult to introduce private sector initiatives here because the customers or the potential clients are not used to paying for the fuel or for the solution. So it's very important to look at markets in this lens. And we also use this total addressable market calculation and total serviceable market. So we try to estimate how big are these different segments of the market. Then the third lesson I would say, and Aminata touched on this, is the complexity of the problems and the barriers and the gaps. So you will see that in many analyses, it's a list of barriers, or probably on a table, you know, they say high cost of distribution, lack of economies of scale, policy gaps, etc. And they appear on a table. But what we find is that the barriers are interconnected and they appear on a hierarchy. So for example, the lack of awareness is a barrier, but you may find you could increase awareness, but if the customers do not have access or they are not able to pay, then all the effort that you put in raising awareness then does not result into any change. So it's very important to look at the barriers in a way that tries to really find what's the most binding constraint and what should the program really focus on within the time limits and the resources that it has. Because some of these barriers, of course, needs to be addressed simultaneously, but some need to be addressed sequentially. And if you address one before the other, then there's potentially no impact. And then the next is, so the next is, and the final one is the application of modeling. So there are very many tools available on the internet, and different actors prefer different tools. What we found is that many times the tool that's selected is maybe identified by the consultant or the funding agency, and that's fine. But it's absolutely critical to work with the government to really try and understand what are you trying to optimize for. So for example, in the case of Sierra Leone, it's very important to understand what's the potential role of carbon finance. And if the government of Sierra Leone would like to come up with a programmatic intervention that taps into the carbon markets, how big is that market, right? What's the potential revenue? And how much can that actually impact or influence the design of the program? And to what extent will it address the challenges of the high upfront cost? So we find that the modeling needs to be driven by the needs, and rather than just a need to, let's say, simulate or, to describe the existing scenario. The national aspiration should be front and center when it comes to picking a modeling framework. So in conclusion, actually what we have been trying to advocate as we speak to different actors, and we've reached out, of course, to the World Bank, to IEA, to MEX, and CCG and GECO, and all these other actors that are really leading this conversation, including CCA, is to develop a standardized framework, of course, that just sets the foundation. All strategies need to go in the places that they need to go, but it's important for them to have this kind of very basic a framework that makes them comparable. And then the other thing to add is that there are really benefits of following the MTF surveys, because you need rich data to really come up with these interventions. One example that I like to give is when we did the work in Zambia, we did an assignment in Zambia, and looking at the MTF data, there was a lot of insights. But when we did gender disaggregated analysis, we actually found that female-led households almost always do not have an LPG tank. It's only the male-headed households. So that insight would not have come out without the data, and also without the effort to actually disaggregate the gender. So what that means is if say the World Bank or the government of Zambia would come up with intervention of promoting LPG, then one way to target that intervention would to look at female-headed households. So that's just an example of how the use of data, and not just data generally, but also gender disaggregated analysis, can help in planning. So in the interest of time, and because I want Jean-Yi and the World Bank team to invite me again, I'm going to stop there and hand over the microphone. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Marufu. Those are incredibly valuable insights and a very clear framework for countries looking to translate ambition into structured, bankable, and measurable implementation pathways. So we will now move from the presentation segment into a country dialogue and reflection segment, where we're joined by two senior government leaders who are deeply engaged in clean cooking strategy development within their respective countries. So let me warmly welcome Ms. Doris Dudua, Deputy Director for Bioenergy and Clean Cooking Focal Person at the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition in Ghana, where she leads work on clean cooking policy, LPG, and improved cook stove deployment, gender-responsive approaches, and international partnerships. And second is Mr. Tokozani Nelson Malunga, Deputy Director for Research and Development at the Ministry of Energy in Malawi, with over 12 years of experience spanning renewable energy, demand-side management, and national clean cooking policy and planning. So Doris and Toko, thank you so much for being here, and we truly appreciate your time and leadership. So Doris, if I may begin with you. Our first question is Ghana planning to develop and launch a national clean cooking strategy? And if so, could you share an outline of the envisioned approach, including the key objectives, major steps, and any preparatory work already underway. And from the government's perspective, what are the top priority areas for advancing clean cooking in Ghana? And where do you see the greatest opportunities for development partners to support? Doris, over to you. Doris, can you hear us? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I was having an issue with my thing. And this is a very interesting program, and from the Ghana point of view, in also developing our national clean cooking policy. For us, Ghana, we are trying to increase access to clean cooking solutions. And in doing so, government is very committed, and we have initiated a lot of programs, including the development of clean cooking policy, clean cooking strategy, and standards for all the technologies available on the markets. This is all in the way of coming up to achieve universal access by 2030. And currently, we are developing a national clean cooking strategy, which is funded by the World Bank, ESMAP. So we are grateful to the World Bank for that. And it's not only being led by the Ministry of Energy, who is the oversight when it comes to energy issues and clean cooking in the country. It's a very strong collaboration with other key institutions like the Energy Commission, who is the regulator, EPA, National Petroleum Authority, CSIR, that does the testing of stoves, then the Ghana Standard Authority, plus other, and the Manufacturers Association, that is GACO. So it's a very strong collaboration from all the key players in the sector to come out with a workable strategy, which is a working document to achieve the aim and objectives of the policy.
Thank you so much, Doris. So now turning over to you, Toko. So could you please share with us the current status and the expected timeline of Malawi's National Clean Cooking Strategy, and how the strategy aligns with Malawi's National Energy Compact and the broader energy access efforts?
Thank you very much, Jingi, and all my fellow participants. Actually, in Malawi, we are developing Malawi National Clean Cooking Strategy, and the status is that we are at vetting the baseline report, which is actually detailing the current situation, the challenges, the opportunities, and the remaining deliverables are the clean cooking investment prospectus and also final draft Malawi National Clean Cooking Strategy, which is expected to be completed by 30th April 2026. And we expect to launch it by end of July 2026. In terms of priorities, actually we are targeting demand side challenges, opportunities, and solutions as priority. Another priority is also supply side challenges, opportunities, and solutions. And another one, which is number 3, is enabling environment challenges, opportunities, and the last one is the issue of financing challenges, opportunities, and solutions. It will also include issues like gender inclusion and social inclusion. It will also have a goal and also a mix of technologies in clean cooking space that will help us to meet universal access to clean cooking by 2030. And lastly, it will also develop a roadmap that will identify strategic or key interventions, setting timelines for their achievement, and also estimating cost, and also it would drive indicators for those strategic interventions for monitoring and evaluation. When you talk about alignment to current Malawi Energy Compact or National Energy Compact of Malawi, which we have signed with the World Bank and African Development Bank, just as any other policy that has been there before this strategy, the Malawi National Clean Cooking Strategy will actually synchronize by taking the targets that we have put for 2030, which is 75% access by 2030. This target is actually in the National Energy Compact, which we have signed with World Bank and African Development Bank. And also, apart from taking the targets in there, in the Energy Compact, also the technology mix that we are promoting to achieve this target, that is for clean cooking access, it will be taken from the strategy. So the strategy will drawn from the National Energy Compact, National Energy Policy, and other documents that are already there.
Thank you so much, Toko. So in the interest of time, let's move on to the Q&A session, because we see many questions coming through the chat box. So maybe one first question is directed to maybe Aminata and Barufu both. That once a clean cooking strategy is launched, how is finance mobilized into the local opportunities? What techniques or products are being or have been attempted? Maybe over to you, Aminata, if you can share a little bit about the Sierra Leone experience.
Sure. We just launched 2 weeks ago, but we're already working with development partners such as the World Bank and the AFDB, specifically at scaling up the institutional capacity of key ministries responsible to drive the implementation of the strategy. We're also working with the ECOWAS on the Regional Harmonization Program on distribution of LPG canisters. From my presentation, you can see that LPG is very key as the next viable option to improve cook stoves. And last but not least, we're working on linking our local companies to investors. There are many investors interested in the carbon market space. So linking the local producers to supply improved cook stoves to big companies, and also linking our LPG suppliers to investors interested in investing in the LPG space. So one is mobilizing resources through development partners. 2 is working on a regional program on LPG distribution. And 3 is linking the companies to investors that have expressed interest on investing in the carbon market space.
Thank you so much, Aminata. Marufu, would you like to comment for this question? And also there is one question directed to you, that what is the potential of combining the technologies off-grid that could potentially power cook stoves, and what is the most feasible way in your experience to approach this for affordability and easy adoption? Over to you, Marufu.
Yeah, thanks for that question. What we have tried to do, of course, in very close collaboration with the partners that we've been working with, is to characterize and, to a great extent, quantify the investment opportunities, because traditionally, cooking has been funded by development assistance. And of course, there's still a lot of effort that needs to come from development assistance finance. But there are also interesting opportunities for the private sector. So I'll give an example. In Kenya, we had one of the major oil companies attend one of the presentations, and they were actually quite surprised at the scale at which the gap exists, and the way we had packaged it in using quantitative values and also providing actionable recommendations. This starts to attract not only the traditional development finance and philanthropy, but actually also the private sector. Then for the rural areas, I think that's where the biggest challenge lies, absolutely. Because a big chunk of the rural areas, of course, it depends on different countries, falls under quadrant 3. So this was a quadrant where the households are not willing or able to pay, and also they don't have access. So that kind of market segment requires a lot of effort, to a great extent requires concessional finance. Many times it's not attractive also for the private sector.
Thank you so much, Marufu. And also thank you for introducing the multi-tier framework to the audience. So maybe this question can be directed to Doris and Toko in terms of how does the strategy in Ghana and Malawi define clean cooking? Does it use the World Bank's MTF definition? And if so, what has been the role of improved cookstoves, ICS, in the strategy, which are below the standard definition of clean cooking, which is tier 4 and above, refers to modern energy cooking services. So it would be great if you can briefly introduce, the clean cooking definition in your strategy, respectively. Let's start with Doris.
Thank you very much. For us, Ghana, the clean cooking solutions, we are looking at improved cookstoves for biomass technologies, which is improved firewood and charcoal stoves. That is the improved version being used as a transition to the cleaner options. And for the cleaner options, we are looking at LPG, e-cooking, that is the induction cooker or pressure cooker, and other e-cooking technologies available on our markets. We're also looking at ethanol stoves and biogas stoves. All these technologies are the market, and we are looking at how we can scale it up using the strategy to develop them.
Thank you, Doris. And Toko, I don't know if you're still connected, but we would like to know, how did you integrate the MTF framework into the National Clean Cooking Strategy development? And also, there is one last question in terms of the financing, in terms of the required budget for implementation that's in the strategy, and how to prioritize the limited investments flow for maximum impacts nationally. So Toko, maybe over to you in terms of the MTF and the prioritization of the investments. Toko, are you still connected? Okay, I think Toko is disconnected. So in terms of this question, I don't know if Marufu or Aminata, yes.
So yeah, sure. I think for us actually, we define clean cooking as comprising, all improved cookstoves, and then all clean cooking fuels. That's what we use to define clean cooking. But in this strategy that we are developing, we are trying actually to learn from the MTF, ESMAP definition, World Health Organization definition, so that we come up with one that is customized for Malawi. We are not yet finalized with this one, but eventually we'll come up with the definition that is actually borrowing from these two ESMAP, that is MTF definition, World Health Organization, and our definition merging to come up with one that is localized, as Murafu Balasa was saying. In terms of prioritization, actually, for us in the Ministry of Energy, in the World Bank project that we have actually received $10 million US, so we can roll out clean cooking technologies. We have started with the high tire technologies, which are quite expensive, and the people cannot afford them. That's what we have started with, knowing well that for lower tire clean cooking technologies, people are able really to maneuver through and access them. So we have started with the high tire technologies, and when the funds are available, we'll be going to include lower tire. So the prioritization of investments actually in Malawi, for the sake of World Bank project asset that we have received, we have actually prioritized the investments by tires, to say high tire technologies first, and then will be also going to lower tires. Another drive for us to take, this in direction for prioritizing investment using tires is that in Malawi, when we conducted the multi-tire framework survey, we found out that only 2% of our households are using higher tire technologies for clean cooking, which means that's area where we need to dig most and prioritize and invest more, so that we move people away from using charcoal and the biomass, even in the urban areas, to start using LPG, bioethanol, and also electric cooking. That's where actually we see a problem is. More people are not able to use these high tire technologies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toko. So in the interest of time, we will be moving on to the closing remarks, but I see many interesting questions coming through the chat box. So we're also happy to exchange offline, from the ESMAP team. So thank you for this excellent discussion. So it is now my pleasure to invite Ms. Wang Nguyen, Senior Energy Specialist at ESMAP, to share closing reflections. Huang, over to you.
Thank you, Yingyi and colleagues, for the excellent set of presentations and insights from your country experience. We're very honored and pleased to have you all here. The strong participation is also very affirming and heartening for us. We can see that there's significant interest in this topic, and we look forward to future webinars to continue these discussions. But on this very specific session, we would like to reiterate the role of ESMAP and the support that we could provide to our government counterparts. It could range from affordability study, market assessment, strategy for market development, supply chain analysis, and others. Essentially carrying out the analytical work needed to generate the evidence base to inform the design of the financial incentives or subsidy schemes as part of the clean cooking strategy. And all of these support will be tailored to the specific needs of the countries whose role, leadership, and ownership is critical to the success of the program. I also want to emphasize the need to continue to draw on the knowledge of partners like EED and similar institutions who have worked with so many of our client countries and also have this exposure and the knowledge drawing from their insights from the ground. So it's a symbiotic relationship between, MTF and similar initiative that we have, and also their on-the-ground experience. And finally, we very much welcome the partnerships and the collaborations with other development partners and donors, many of whom I can see represented here in our joint journey to support our government counterparts in the achievement of the results for the people in the countries that we support. The need for financing is large, and we find that the efficient coordination is incredibly important. So thank you so much for all of your time and engagement in the topic today. We look forward to seeing you in future sessions.
Thank you so much, Juan, and heartfelt thank you to all the speakers and participants and partners for joining us today. So we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming sessions. We have a December webinar focusing on delivery and financing models, a January one focusing on operationalizing electric cooking, and a February webinar focusing on institutional cooking and school feeding. So thank you very much again, and wishing everyone a wonderful rest of the day.